Thank you, Ezer. So we are going to today try and relive what it was like for the Jews to leave Egypt. So my first question is how does everyone think the Jews felt when leaving Egypt? This year is going to be very interactive, so please feel free to turn on your videos. Please respond. I'll be asking many questions. Hopefully, we'll be able to each find our own way of how we view how the Exodus went down. So, what do we think? How did the Jews feel? See, scared and apprehensive. Okay. What other feelings do we think? So we're currently
relieved to be leaving Egypt.
Relieved. Okay, so we've got scared, apprehensive, and relieved. What else? I'll put that in the chat. Okay. What else?
Excited.
Excited. Okay.
Grateful.
Grateful. Okay, good. What else?
I believe some of them didn't want to leave because they were accustomed to what they had.
Right. Some didn't want to leave, even though they're slaves. They didn't want to leave. Okay. What else do we have? We've got a pretty wide range now. Okay. So now my question is, everybody, there is different stages. And we're going to go through hopefully a lot of different stages of when the Jews were in slavery, and we'll try and see if we all agree as to how they felt at each given point. Okay, so if everybody has the source sheet, that's great. I'm going to also share screen. Again, I'll alternately turn on and turn off share screen. That way I can see everybody and your reactions as well. Okay, so now I'm going to be sharing the screen again. If something is unclear, please let me know, and then we will. And then I will have to go back. So again, to start off with the why, it's important to show everybody to express how they think they felt. It's because in every Seder night we quote the Haggadah, which is quoting the Mishnah, stating that in every generation a person is required to view themselves as if they left Egypt, as it says, "You'll tell your son that they're saying, because this is what God did for me when I left Egypt." So we each have to see how we feel and how we think we would have felt if we had been in Egypt. So for those who printed it out, they will have this nice chart they can fill out on their own. If not, don't worry, you're welcome to fill it out, later, or also a nice thing, activity to do leading up to Pesach at some point, to try and boil out exactly what you think at each different stage. So the first stage we're going to go with is when they were slaves. So here are the psukim. Right. So here are the first chapter of Shemot, when the Jews are actually very much slaves with backbreaking labor. So now let's see, what do we think that they're feeling now, and then how would them being told about this make them feel? So please, feel free to read it, right? Hebrew or English, read it on your own. Just tell me what your impression from these verses is, and how you think they would react.
They were anguished.
Anguished, very good. Right? Anguish, right? Feel there's no hope. Okay, what else?
Angry.
Say that again.
Angry.
Angry. Excellent. Desperate, I see from Joyce. Okay. Right, we got a lot of different difficult emotions people are saying they're feeling right now. Okay. So then what do they do at this very difficult point? What do they do in verses 23 and 24?
They cried out to God.
Right, they cried out to God. So based on the fact they're crying out to God, what do we think that their reaction would be when they're told finally, you're free?
Happy.
They should be happy. Right, that's what we would think. They should be happy as soon as they're able to leave. But is that really, right, elated? Very good, right? So, but is that really how they're going to end up feeling? So to that effect, so let's see. So that's what we would think. But now, so that's our opinion. But let's see what Moshe's opinion is. Source number 2. Okay, so this is when God is trying to tell Moshe, you should go back and tell them that it's time to leave. So what does Moshe think is going to happen?
They're going to be skeptical.
They'll be skeptical,
They won't
right?
believe it.
They won't believe. They'll say I'm lying, right? All terrible, right? Isn't like you're like, wait, what? Like, what happened? Like, why does Moshe think this? So, why would Moshe think this?
It's the fear of the unknown. Even though we go to Hashem and ask him for things, we are also still scared of the unknown.
Right? We don't know how it's going to work, right? So because it's unknown, we don't know. So there might be another reason why Moshe might be a little, doubtful of the Jews, is because Moshe's tried this one time before, right? Why does Moshe have to run away all the way to Midyan? Because he was tattled on by the Jews, which is why he had to run away, right? The Jews ratted him out to Paro. So maybe he doesn't trust them. He's like, if when I was trying them last time, they decided to turn on me, who says this time's going to be any different? So that might explain Moshe's fears, right? This Moshe thinks is going to happen. But what actually happens? Okay, so now this is when Hashem finally mentions Moshe, it'll be okay, don't worry, it'll be just fine. What goes on? All right, we're now in source number 3. Or we can hopefully see it on the screen. So how do they feel now?
They did believe. They did believe.
Right, they did believe. So we're like, what do you think? So Moshe, you were completely wrong, right? All you have to do is walk in and say it's time to go, and they're super happy, right? That's it, right? This should be a very short shir. We're done. The Jews were happy to leave in the end, but that's not the full story. Because this was when they first heard of the news before reality set in. What do I mean by that? Because what happens after he tells the people is that he then goes before Paro and says, let my people go. And what does Paro say? No, he's not letting them go. And instead, Paro says, you know what? Because you thought you could leave, you're clearly not working hard enough. So instead, he doubles their workload, takes away the straw they needed to bake their bricks, and says, you go find the straw yourselves. And then we see the officers, the Jewish officers who are in charge of making sure that the Jews would meet their proper amount. And what do they say? Right? Right. These are the officers who, according to Chazal, right, according to the Midreshet the Gemara, will later become the elders of the Jewish people. When the Jews were in the desert. So.
But first they say, but you've made things worse for us, so thanks for nothing.
Right? Thanks for nothing. Right? Excellent, Mrs. Woody. Right? It's just like, what? You made things so worse. Like, how can you say it? Like, yeah, what are you doing? Thanks, but no thanks, Moshe. Like, you just ruined everything. So, and you might say, oh, this is really just the officers, right? But maybe, the rest of the Jews still believe, and they're still okay with this. So now let's fast forward. So that was the end of chapter 5. Now we're going to go to chapter 6. Okay, so now after they had this whole thing all the Jews freaked out, and then Moshe turns to God saying, "What gives? You said you were going to let them out. You made it worse. Come on, God, help us out here." And God said, "Don't worry, I'll make it work." And then Moshe hears the news, and he tells the Jews, "It's going to be great. Don't worry, Bnei Israel. God's going to save you." And what's the reaction?
They're not up for it. They're not up for listening to him.
Right? They're not up for listening. So why aren't they listening now?
Well, it says Mikotze ruach u'ma'avodah kasha.
Right? So, right, it's too hard, right? There's just way too much work. They can't even think about leaving right now. That's how hard the work is now. So in the beginning, when the workload wasn't too bad, they could consider leaving, right? They could look towards a hopeful future. Now that there's have such backbreaking labor, they can't even see tomorrow. So, and what else do we hear And then after this is when Moshe starts doing the 10 plagues. So, and now, right, I'm sure we've, this past week, read the first 7. This coming week, we're going to read the last 3. So how would we expect Bnei Israel to react when the plagues start happening? What would we expect, right? Until now, they seem that there's no hope, right? They can't even listen to God saying that I'm going to save you. So how do they react now? Everybody's speechless. Excellent. Because that's exactly what Bnei Israel were as well. We hear absolutely nothing from them, right? From when the officers are complaining, the Jews not refusing to listen. The Jews don't say another word until they get all the way to the Red Sea, right? Until they leave. We don't hear a word from Bnei Israel until they leave. So the question then is, right? The title of the shir is, well, how did the Jews react to the 10 plagues? So the answer is, they didn't. But even if we don't see how the Jews reacted, we do see how some other people reacted. So I would like to posit that maybe the Jews' reactions were similar to the reactions of other people who we do see their reactions to throughout the story. Okay, so now we skip the blank. So, right, so first and foremost, we have, Moshe and Aaron who are, performing all the plagues. So that's one type of reaction. God says, do it. And they're like, let's do this. We're going to be free. This is the way to go here, full steam ahead. But there's some other people involved. So who's the first? So the first group to react. Well, let's do in order. Who's the first person to react to any of the plagues? The first person.
Paro.
Right, Paro. I see Joyce asked the question, is it because the plagues didn't affect them the same as it did the Egyptians? Excellent point, right? None of the plagues affected the Jews. According to the Sukkim, according to the text itself, according to the Midrash, the Jews were affected by the plague of darkness, which is when the undeserving Jews were killed off. But you're right. For the most part, the Jews, simple understanding, Jews had plagues did not touch them. But it's still strange if you don't see a reaction to the plagues, even if it's not affecting you, right? You can still react to something that happens to somebody else, right? But we don't see we hear absolute silence, which is the strange part. You might expect them to say, oh, I guess it just means that we're really going. Like we don't see a change in their perspective so much, right? We had them they're refusing to listen, and right. And then we don't hear anything from them again until they're already out of Egypt. So we're trying to figure out what's their thought process. Okay, so
Rabbi, it's Claudette. Is this situation that the Jewish people were not affected by the plagues, but the Egyptians were? Was this a journey for the Egyptians too, for them to change their way of life?
Perhaps, right? That is one option. That the goal was to see, will the Egyptians recognize God and therefore let the Jews go on their own, which would lead to positive results. That is definitely one of the possibilities for the goal of the plagues, right? Not only would it be to get the Jews out, but also to show the Egyptians that God is God and that they should let the Jews go willingly. So now we're going to see. So we see Paro reacting. What's Paro's reaction? So we'll get back to Paro's reaction because this is a very long reaction. So we're going to do his last, just in interest of time. So we're going to go with some of the more short reactions. So the first that we have is the magicians, the Khartoumim. So what's their reaction whenever any of the plagues happen? What's their standard reaction?
They try to outdo what Moshe.
Right? They try and outdo it. They try and outdo them, right? And so that works for the first couple. But when we finally get to the plague of lice, kinim, what do they say?
failed.
They say they can't do it.
They say they can't do it. And what do they say instead?
It's the finger of God. Etzba Elokim.
right? It's God, the finger of God, right? It's God's hand. That's Elohimi, right? So that means that we have the magicians, seemingly a very powerful force advising Paro, literally acknowledge God did it. Takes them a couple plagues. Plague number 4. Number 3. Right? They're already like, you know what? This is a power beyond us. This is clearly God. This is, it's not that Moshe's the best magician. The Moshe are the best magicians ever. It's like, no, they've got some supernatural force that we cannot control, and like that's it. It's God. So, right. So that's. I see. There's a question. What about the Jews? So, right. Were they still too busy with the labor? So the King, we don't hear anything. But the Midrash says that around the time that the plague started, that's when the Jews stopped. The Egyptians stopped having the Jews to work. They say this was on Rosh Hashanah. Right, so the first of Tishrei, that's when the plague started, and that's when the Jews no longer had to work because the Egyptians were already starting to be afraid that if they give them more work, then they'll just be leading to more plagues, and they're like, yeah, you know what? Let's just let's not anger God too much, and that'll be that. But we'll leave that Midrash aside for now. So right now we see it slowly but surely. We see the minds of the Egyptians changing. Right, so the first people we see who actively change their minds is the magicians. Right, they are like, you know what, God did it. The end. So, but they're not the first group to change their minds, and then and stay that way seemingly until the end. Next, we have by the plague of hail. Okay, so now the interesting part about the plague of hail is that it was given a warning. Many other plagues also had warnings, but this warning was different because this warning gave a way out. It gave a chance for the Egyptians to not have to suffer. So what was the option? How could they avoid that? So yeah, we're now in source number 8. We're in the 9th chapter of Shemot of Exodus. So what is there? So what is the options, and what do the Egyptians do? Okay, so what do we have? What's the reaction to being told that there is going to be fiery hail coming down from the heavens, barad, right? What are the Egyptians' reactions?
Those that believed protected their cattle, and the others did nothing.
Right. So now it seems like the Egyptians have two groups: those who have at this point realized God is in charge, right? And right? Hashem is gonna punish us, and if He tells us to do something, we should do it because it's definitely gonna happen. And yeah, we saw the previous ones. So only once, shame on you. Only twice, shame on me. It's or even 6 times. Or plague number 7. It's just like at this point, it's like, yeah, it's gonna happen. Like, yeah, I don't know why you think otherwise. Like, duh. But there still are, despite there having been already 6 plagues, there's still some of the Egyptians who refuse to admit that it's gonna happen. Right? So the Egyptians we see are half and half, as it stands right now. And then we have, right? Don't worry, there's still, but even now it's half and half. But it gets a little, but it keeps going. The development of the Egyptians. Okay, now next we see by the plague of locust. Okay, so what's the reaction to the Arba? So
They're ready to throw in the towel.
Right, this is Paro's servants, right? People in his household are like, Paro, no, just no, we're all gonna die. I don't care who's right, we're all gonna die. Why are you doing this to us? Right? We've already had, we've had our animals dying, we've been overrun by wild animals, we've had our fields hit, not once, not twice, right? It's what are you doing? Just let them go. It's just not worth it. Who cares, whether or not whether or not Paro's right, is God right? They don't care. They're just just stop. We just let them go. Just stop. Okay. And then, right, so so it seems like at this point, almost all of the Egyptians are convinced in one way, shape, or form, right? But it's not quite so clear, right? Because the way I prepared it until now is that as soon as you're convinced, you stay convinced, but that might not necessarily be the case. And who's our best example of being very confused? Right, Paro. So now we're going to see Paro's varied reactions. Okay, so we might have to do this a little bit quickly, just so we have time for everything. So again, we're going to mention each of the stages. Every shout out what you think, what you see happen, and then hopefully we'll be able to get through all the instances. For more on the technical of how could God have been convinced? How could God have taken on to convince Paro? How did he harden his heart? For more on that, I'm going to speak about that later tonight. Link is in the slideshow. This is the document if you want to join me later tonight for that. But we'll do a short version of his changing minds. Right. So I see that Dean is asking, how many times did it take before Paro believed? So the answer is seemingly all the way to the end. Because as we'll see how his mind, he goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So the first thing is by the initial time with the snakes, right? I see Mrs. Whitty saying that Paro didn't really believe until Yom Suf. Okay, so we'll have to see if that's the case or not. Okay, so we'll see. At what point is he convinced and not convinced? So let's see. So the first thing is after the initial thing after the initial case of the throwing down of the rod turning to a snake. Is Paro convinced?
No.
No. Doesn't even he's like, no. Like, sure, you're a better magician, that's it. Then the next case is with the plague of blood. How does he react? Unfazed. He's like, oh, you didn't.
They can do the same thing.
Right? How much is the same thing? You did it bigger. What do you do? Okay, so not convinced yet. So now let's see by the frogs.
I think they also managed that one.
Right, so they also managed that one, but here we see that he again. So he asked Moshe to get rid of the plague, which Moshe did, and then as soon as it was over, Paro says, "Nah." Right, so here Paro hardens his own heart as soon as the issue is gone. So then he's not both. He puts on a strong. He pretends like, oh, I can't. He's like, no, he's being a very good politician. He's saying, oh yeah, Moshe, you're right. It's okay. Just please get rid of it. And then as soon as it's over, he's like, I never said I'd let you leave. Nope. Right. So, right. Still looking pretty bad. So the next time we see, Paro's, strong reaction is by, Keening, that's the reaction. We see by the, right, Paro's unfit them. Let's see about wild animals. We see a similar thing again. What happens?
As soon as he was relieved, Paro hardened his heart again.
Right, same thing, right? Nothing new. Same reaction of Paro. Okay, so then how about the next one? Okay, right now there's after the death of the cattle. What's Paro's reaction here?
At this point, God has hardened the heart of Paro.
Right now, it seems like God hardened his heart. Wait a minute, but until now, Paro was. Why is it switching over? So, excellent question. That we're going to address much more. Again, that's for later. That's for later, not for now. Did I put the link here? If I didn't, I'll put it. Oh, it's not in there. Oopsies. Okay, I'll make sure I put it in. My apologies. Okay, let me scroll back up. Okay, so right. So the question is, what's going on with God hardening his heart? So, right, so that's a separate question. Again, I'm going to address it later tonight. You want a full example of how and the philosophy behind that. But now we're saying so then all of a sudden God intervenes and hardens his heart. So then you say, well, then we don't care about Paro anymore because Paro's not controlling his destiny anymore. It's removed from him. But the answer is that's what you would think. but we have to keep reading the psukim a little bit more. Okay, so what do we see? Right, so we see after boils again, God hardens his heart. But what happens after the plague of hail? Right, which is when we said that there was a choice in it. Right, which before with a warning where the people had had an option. So what does right? So what happens here?
So then first he says he will let them go. He admits that he was wrong, but then he changes his mind.
Right, but who else changes their mind? Not just Paro changes his mind this time.
His servants.
Right, his servants. Right, so remember we're talking about how people seemingly decided that now we're going that are currently believing in God. So looks like not. Right.
Rabbi, there's an interesting line in this part in chapter 9:27, where Pharaoh is making an admission. I and my people are wicked.
Right.
He's admitting that they're at fault for some of the things that the Israelites are going through. And even though his heart is hardened, I think he's coming to the fact of we contributed to this situation.
Right, he's getting there, but it looks like afterwards he takes that both he and the people all take a step back and undo all the progress. Look, they undid it, right? Because they hardened their own hearts. It's not it's not God stepping in here. This is themselves doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we have by this next one is by right. So this is the middle of the next plague, right? So this is after the plague of locust. So what would they say? This is the middle of plague of locust. Sorry. This is leading up to the plague of locust. This is this coming week's first verse. Said that I hardened his heart. So and right. So the question is, so when did he harden his heart? Again, we'll leave that aside for now. But then we see that what's the right that now before it was the hardening was done by God. Now it's done by before it was done by themselves. Now who does it this time? Right. This time we're back to God. Now God's doing it again. So it's we're going back and forth. Who's hardening whose heart and why. So, and then we get to the plague of darkness. Who hardens God's heart? Who hardens his heart? Paro's heart.
God hardens his heart.
Right, now it's back to God doing it. And then we have after, when the Jews are fleeing. Oh, I did put it in. I'll put it there in my bad. Right. So what happens this time? Right now, the Jews have finally left. Right, this is after the 10th plague of the firstborn. Now the Jews are out of Egypt. They're by the Reed Sea. What happens? What do we see?
Keep Paro chasing them.
Paro's chasing them, but who makes him? But who makes his heart change?
I guess God does that one.
Right. It sounds like God did it, but on the other hand, like God says he's going to, but it seems like they did so on their own. It's unclear, the language. Right? He says that I will harden. Hashem is the one who's going to harden Paro's heart, but then we see that when that actually happens, it's not God doing it; they do it themselves. Right? Right, we said the heart of Paro and his friends was turned to the people, and they said, which in this verse, in chapter 14, verse 5, there's no mentioning of God doing it. Here they're doing it themselves. So, right, so it's kind of all over the place here. So, and it's just really unclear what's going on. So as far as Paro's reaction, it's complicated. It's all over the place. Sometimes God steps in, sometimes he does it himself, right? He's all over. So now we're going to return to the question of what was the Jews' reaction. Okay, so the Jews, so I believe that I mentioned before that they were, I see some mentioning a string dance. That's true. This is like they're going all over the place. So the question is, what happens when they're waiting by the Red Sea? What is the reaction of the Jewish people? Right, when we finally see the Egyptians chasing after them, what is their reaction?
They were afraid.
Right, they're afraid, and not only are they afraid, what do they say? Sorry, moving down in the reaction.
They shouted, they cried to God.
They cry to God, and what do they say? What's their complaint?
Weren't there enough graves in
died.
Egypt?
Right, well, there are not enough graves in Egypt. Why are you killing us? So it's getting quite dark, right? They're like, we thought maybe, the Jews, maybe they improved. Doesn't really seem like it. And then we get to, but then of course, we know the answer at the end of the story, that God steps in and he splits the sea. And now the Jews are finally freed. And how do they react now? Right, what's the reaction? Sorry, they're all gone. Now we're getting to the reaction. Okay, what's the reaction afterwards? Hopefully this is familiar. What's the reaction once after they're finally on dry land and they see all the Egyptians are dead?
They sing.
And they rejoice.
They sing and they rejoice. So that seems amazing. Seems like all of a sudden they had this huge turnaround. They're happy now. It's like, right, worlds apart. So what happened? And also, like,
It lasts almost 3 days. Sorry.
right. So it happens in like 3 days, right? So it's a very short time period. They change in time, like the whole thing. But is it really such a short transition? And what caused it? Because as it looks right now, it looks like the Jews are just as non-believing as the Egyptians are. Right? They have
Actually, they said before that the quote you gave before shows that they told me most all the time, just leave it alone, חדל ממנו. They didn't want, when they were in Mitzrayim, this is the only reaction we have for them for the whole Makot. Now they're saying, we have told you before, חדל ממנו.
Right? We told you to leave us alone. Right? That's what they said. So implied, maybe during the whole time of all of the plagues, all they had to say to God was, stop it. You're making our lives harder. Like, maybe that's where they were. So if that's the case, what?
By the time of the Korban Pesach, clearly they voted with their shaitan knives.
Excellent point. Good, you got it. Right? So what's the difference between the Jews and the Egyptians? Right? Say it again.
So when it came down time for the Korban Pesach, they clearly believed they did what they were told to do, and they knew that would offend the Egyptians. But at that point, they had faith.
Right.
They knew this was going to happen.
Right. The supposedly non-believing Jews, right? B'nai Israel, what do? They're in Egypt. Right. This is right before the 10th plague. And what do?
They shech the Korban Pesach, and they put blood on their doorposts.
Right in front of the Egyptians' faces. They slaughter their gods and put the blood on their doorposts. So no matter how lacking in faith they may have been, what did the Jews do? Right?
They did what they were supposed to do.
They did exactly what God said, right? Look at verse 28. Whatever the children of Israel did, whatever God commanded Moshe and Aaron, so did they, right? So they may have had their theological problems. They may have, had their issues, but they still did it. Similarly, we see as they're leaving Egypt, right? So they were given, a certain directive of what they should do and what they should not do. And, right? And what happened? They'd leave, right?
Yeah.
They do it. They may have had their philosophical shortcomings, but they still believe. So what's my point of giving you all this complicated mess? So the way that I view it is that the Jews are a very large people with many different thought processes in mind. And different people may have had different thought processes. So I would like to suggest that everybody had their own different thought processes, but the point being is that when push came to shove, they did it. And that's the important point, is that no matter where you are standing philosophically, do you believe, do you not believe, yes, no, what really matters is that when it comes down to it and God asks you, will you do my mitzvot? Will you do what I tell you? If the answer is yes, that's what counts. Having questions is fine. The real question is, will you do what God tells you to do? Okay, so that's the end of this year. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to say them now. And again, if somebody needs to go, you're welcome to leave. I'll stick around for a couple minutes to answer all of your questions.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure. Hopefully, I'll be seeing everybody at the next Rishon as well.
I was going to say just before, if we want to offer questions as afterwards, I just want to take the opportunity to jump in and thank everybody once again for coming out today. Thank you to our speakers, Rabbi Metzger and Mrs. Horowitz. Thank you to the co-hosts, Chaim, Minyan, and Clanton Park Synagogue. Thank you to all of you for coming out. It's been a pleasure over the last 2+ years to get to know many of you and to learn together with you so many times. So I thank you for those opportunities, and as well as for today. And I'm looking forward again to staying in touch. Just a reminder that next Midreshet Rishon is 3 weeks away, and you'll be seeing more details of that on the email list. If you do not receive our emails and you'd like to sign up, you can just leave a message for me or Rabbi Metzger in the chat, and I will add you. Thanks so much. Rabbi
Thank
Metzger,
you.
feel free to follow up.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Both Shirim were great, and thank you, Ezra, for all your efforts all these years.
Thank you.
Mensch.